Okay, so tonight we're going to speak about the fun topic of debt management. So I just want to this thing here. Of course, when I say fun, and yeah, I know for most people wouldn't consider it that. Today we will forego the introduction again of Losik. I'm pretty sure by now you guys should know who I am. So, and if there is someone new, we can just catch up again. So, what we're going to look at today on our agenda is firstly understanding debt, meaning good versus bad debt. Yes, that's correct. Not all debt is bad. Then we look at a very important factor when it comes to debt, which is the cost of credit. We will look at different repayment strategies, a snowball versus the avalanche method in terms of strategies to tackle your debt. Then we'll look at something called debt consolidation, or as I like to call it, debt consolidation. And we'll then look at the debt counseling process, how that works and who's it for. And lastly, once again, we will have some homework via our action steps. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay, so firstly, what is good debt and what is bad debt? Okay, so I have something blocking my screen. Well, good debt is essentially debt where when you are borrowing, it invests in appreciating assets or income generating opportunities. For example, using a mortgage to purchase a property or a home, using a student loan to go and study an occupation or a skill that can help you earn more, taking a business loan to expand a successful business or buy a successful business. And the key trait for good debt is that it creates potential for long-term financial growth. So yes, even though you are borrowing, even you're paying interest, the growth you get from that debt actually leads to an increase in your wealth. Now, bad debt, on the other hand, funds depreciating assets, meaning assets that go down in value, or short-term consumption, meaning you use it and there's nothing to show for it. For example, credit card debt, luxury car loans, and payday loans. A key trait, it is high interest with no return on investment. So that's the thing. It's all about I'm borrowing this money, I'm paying for this money, but what am I getting in return? If you are getting nothing in return, it's bad debt. If you are growing your wealth, if you are growing your assets in return, then it's considered good debt. Now, let's look at a few examples of good debt. Firstly, education. Been shown that if you have a degree or a trade qualification, it increases your lifetime earnings on average. Now, no, yes, everyone has that brother, cousin, sister, or whatever it is that somehow made it with matric and is richer than everyone else. That is an outlier. On average, someone who has a degree or trade qualification has a higher increase in lifetime earnings, right? So once again, education there is a return on what you paid. So if you took out the student loan, that can be considered good debt, obviously provided you study something that is actually quite useful. Now, if you look at real estate, over the long term, real estate has grown, right? Yes, sometimes it goes through bad patches, but the very nature of real estate and land, it is that it is in a limited supply, meaning that you always have real estate going up. Everyone always needs a roof over their head. And not only does it grow in value, but it also generates income. It can also generate income if it is a rental property. Of course, business expansion alone, they can scale very importantly a really successful business to boost profits or to buy an existing business that is already profitable. Remember, taking a business loan out on a brand new business is a bit of a different story. That can be quite risky. Now, why does it work? So, if you ever heard this word leveraging in finance, leveraging means taking low interest borrowing or loans in order to get high return. In other words, I borrow at 10%, but I get a return at 20% or 30% or whatever the case may be. Also, in some instances, such as with a business loan, there are also certain tax advantages whereby you can deduct the interest from your annual income and reduce your taxes. However, there is a caution. Over borrowing or poor planning can turn good debt risky. That's very important. So yes, buying a property, taking out a home loan to buy the property, and a property can increase in value, fantastic. But if you are borrowing more than what you can repay, that can turn it into a bad debt. Now, let's look at the trap of bad debt. And what are the common culprits? Your credit cards, very easy to swipe. And if you look at the annual percentage rate, 20% plus on average. And that is normally being spent on non-essential purchases. You think you're doing a Black Friday sale where you're scoring and you getting a discount of 40%. The reality is you're actually paying 100% more when you put it on your credit card. Another thing also, auto loans, especially a new car, can lose 20% of the value in its first year. On a typical 400,000 rand car, that is 80,000 rand it loses in the first year. If you look at payday loans, loans that last 1 month, they would charge you, you borrow at the beginning of the month 1,000 rand, you have to pay back 1,300, 1,400 at the end of the month. If you analyze some of those interest rates, up to 400% annualized interest, and that traps borrowers in cycles of debt. So those are the common culprits in terms of getting you in the trap of bad debt. And what are the consequences? It erodes savings through compound interest. Not the type of compound interest that builds your wealth, but the type of compound interest where you're paying interest on interest and get stuck in that trap. What it also does is, with your bad debt, it limits your future borrowing power in when you want to maybe make good debt to purchase a property. Usually also, they do tend to lower your credit score when not managed properly. Of course, having all this debt with no return on investment creates a lot of stress and financial instability. Now, something that is not often stood correctly is the cost of credit, meaning money is not free, it costs you. But how much does it actually cost you? That is what we'll be looking at right now. Sorry, before I go on, Kendra, can you just give me another sound check there quickly if you're all good?
All fine.
Okay, and then if there's any questions, you're welcome to type it in the chat. And then Kendra, you can just let me know if there's any questions I need answering. Okay,
Will do.
thank you. Okay, so when understanding the cost of credit, here are some key terms. Number one is the repo rate. So what is the repo rate? The rate at which the South African Reserve Bank borrows to your commercial bank. So your Standard Banks, your Absa, your FNBs, they actually borrow money from the Reserve Bank. So it's the banker's bank, right? That's the national, and they determine the interest rate. Now, our current repo rate is 6.75%. Now, you may have noticed that the interest rate does not remain the same throughout the years, right? There's sometimes where the interest go up and there's sometimes where the interest go down. So the easiest way to understand whether interests are more likely to go up or whether they're more likely to go down is to look at inflation. Why? Interest rates is used to control inflation. That is the number one priority of the Reserve Bank, also known as the central bank, right? So the South African Reserve Bank is not the only central bank that does this. It's called inflation targeting. Now, there are many other countries that also does inflation targeting. What does it mean? When prices go up, right? Prices increase, that is called inflation. Now, in order to curb inflation, one of the most effective ways to stop it is to increase interest rates, meaning you make borrowing more expensive. Now, it's important to understand that something like 90% of all transactions is actually via credit. Only 10% is only through cash. Think of it, properties being bought is on credit. Cars being bought is on credit. stuff being bought on loans, credit cards, store accounts, that's all on credit. So 90% of transactions are on credit. When you increase the interest rate, it makes credit more expensive. When things are more expensive, what happens? Prices start to drop or slow down in going up, and then inflation drops down. So if you want to know, are interests going to go up or are they going to go down? What you want to look at is where are we with inflation? Now, in South Africa, we have something called the inflation target, meaning the government, or sorry, the Reserve Bank wants to keep our inflation between 3 and 6%. And there's even talk of keeping between 3 and 5%. Now, what does that mean? What it means is when our inflation is closer to the low point of 3%, we are more likely to have interest stay lower, right? If inflation is going up to 5 past 6%, then you have interest are more likely to go higher. Now, why does this matter? If you're borrowing money, if you're buying a long-term debt, like buying a car, buying a property, etc., you have to know, is my interest going to go up? Right? Because if you buy and you do not know whether it's going to go up or down, you may buy for too high a monthly repayment, right? So if it sounds a bit confusing, basically interest go up and down. It forms part of the cost of money. And if you want to know, are interest going to go up, you look at where is inflation? Is it high? Or where is inflation? Where it's low? If inflation is hitting high, then interests are going to go up. If inflation is going low, then interests are going to go down, right? Now, why is it important to understand? Because your cost of credit is primarily made up from interest. Now, how do you as a client pay that interest? Well, you have something called the prime lending rate, and this is the rate at which the banks lend to the best customers. That amount is repo plus 3.5%, which at the moment is 10.25, meaning the banks borrow from the Reserve Bank at 6.75%. They then borrow to their best customers at 10.25%. You also have something called the maximum lending rate, which is prime plus 17.5%. That's correct, 17.5%, which means the most you can get charged for a loan is 28%. Right now, remember when I spoke about interest going up, interest going down? If I had to use an example, for example, you bought a property and interest rates was 10.25% and you're paying 10,000 Rand a month. If that interest goes up by 1%, your repayment will go up by 1,000 Rand. Now, if you feel interest might go up, you want to then be sure when you buy that property for 10,000 Rand that you can pay the extra 1,000 or 2,000. And that is why it's important to understand how interest works, how to fix the cost of your loan, and when to know if interests are more likely to go up or go down. Okay. Now, if we look at just the repo rate, which is relatively high compared to other countries, you also have something called credit life insurance, right? So many of you know, you take out a loan and you see this thing that's on there is called credit life. This can often be a few hundred to sometimes over 1,000 Rand per month onto your existing loan payment, right? So this can add anywhere from 3% to 5% to your loan cost. Then you have something like initiation fees. You have something like monthly service fees, right? This can add another 1,000 Rand up front, if not more. It can add, and that is per 10,000 Rand. It can add monthly admin fees, sometimes 60 Rand, sometimes 50 Rand, but it's every single month and usually for a period of 60 months. So it's not just your interest, it's your credit life that they make compulsory, and it's your upfront fees and ongoing service fees. Add that also is that when you look at personal loans, whereas vehicles and property tend to be at prime or roundabout at prime, maybe prime plus 1, prime plus 2, sometimes even prime minus. So anywhere from 9 to 11% on cars and property. On your personal loans, you find a much higher rate, anywhere from 15 to the maximum of 28%. Credit cards also, anywhere from 20 to 25%. Now, why is the interest higher on these accounts? because this is what's known as unsecured debt. Meaning if someone doesn't pay this, there's nothing or no asset that the bank come and take. Whereas if they don't pay the car or you don't pay the property, there's still an asset that the bank can come and claim again. So that is secured. With unsecured loans, because there's nothing they can take if you don't pay, what they do is simply charge you more interest. Now, what does it mean when you get charged 28% or 25% interest? Well, let's look at this calculation. 1 second. If you look at this calculation, you will see that in this case, you borrowed 100,000 Rand over a period of 6 years, which can be quite common for loans, 5 to 6 years of this size, at the interest rate of 27%. Here you borrowed 100,000 Rand, but you paid back a total of 202,000 Rand, meaning the interest you paid on that 100,000 Rand was 102,000 Rand. So you paid more than double in interest in what you borrowed. Now, why don't you see this? Because it's disguised as what seems like a fairly reasonable payment. You don't see the 100,000 Rand costing you 200,000 Rand over 6 years. You simply see the 2,800 Rand per month in repayment that's coming off your bank account. That's why it's very important not just to look at the monthly repayment, but the actual amount of interest you will pay over the long term. Because effectively, you have given away 102,000 Rand of your hard-earned money to the bank. That's effectively what happened. Now that you understand the cost of credit, and hopefully it's not too hard on people on the Wednesday evening. I know I went into a bit of numbers there, right? But I feel it's important to have an understanding. And if anybody has any questions around that, because I know I went a bit quick through it, but I feel if there's one thing I feel people must understand is interest rates and how they work, because it affects us in our all our daily lives, unfortunately, right? In many ways. So if you can understand it, you can better understand how to better manage and pay off your debt. Okay, now we're moving on to how do you actually pay off debt if you now accumulate some debt and you say, Anwar, you know what? I actually want to start paying for my debt rather than making debt. Well, there's two accepted methods. The one is called the debt snowball method, and the other one is called the avalanche method. So why does it matter? Because high interest debt compounds quickly and it drains your wealth. We just saw it in the example with the cost of credit. You borrowed 100,000 Rand, which you didn't have. Not only did you have to pay back that 100,000, but you had to pay back an additional 102,000 Rand. And that is effectively you becoming poorer by 100,000 Rand. You gave away interest. The idea is that you want to earn on your money, not pay on your money. So basically, debt is the reverse of building wealth. It actually drains your wealth and your ability to build wealth. Now, there's two popular strategies used to tackle debt. The one is called the debt snowball method. And what it does is it prioritizes the small debts first for quick wins. Then there is the debt avalanche method, which targets the higher interest debt. Why? Because that costs more, and that is to save money long term. Regardless of which one you take, the goal is to eliminate debt efficiently while staying motivated. So what is the difference between the two? Well, firstly, if you look at the debt snowball method, the focus is you want to go with a debt with the smallest balance first. Why? When you pay off, I said beat, I suppose the same thing. When you pay off that small debt first, it will take much quicker, but also you get the sense of accomplished that you've at least ticked off one of the tasks off that sheet. So one debt down, next one to go. Now, what you do is, firstly, you work out your budget and you pay your minimum balance to all your debts. So that's very important. You're not going to ignore your other debts. In either of these strategies, you do not ignore all your debts. You pay the minimum payment you're supposed to pay on your debts. Then after doing your budget, you see what money is available. Let's say that the amount is 1,000 Rand. You now take that 1,000 Rand and you put it with the debt snowball method to the debt with the lowest balance. When that debt is paid, of course, you're paying an extra 1,000 Rand there. You then take that extra 1,000 plus what you're paying to the smaller debt, and it rolls over to the next debt. Once that debt is paid off, you now have the 1,000 Rand that you had initially, the amount you're paying from debt number one, the amount you're paying from debt number two, and now using that full amount to tackle debt number three. And so you get the idea, it starts to snowball. So by the time you get to the debt with the largest balance, you have basically taken not just 1,000 Rand, but all the other debts payments that is now a big massive snowball, and you're paying that big debt off, and now you can see big chunks of that debt getting paid off instead of small little payments. So that is the debt snowball method. The debt avalanche method is again the mathematically correct method. So if you say, hang on, Anwar, I know the highest interest rate loan is the one that costs me the most money. Now, sometimes it can be the biggest loan you have, sometimes it can be the smallest loan you have. But when you tackle the highest interest rate, you're actually saving money in the long term. Now, sometimes your smallest debt then can also be your high interest debt, where you can just squash it anyway, right? Sometimes maybe the high interest is the bigger loan, and you have other loans that are smaller, and you say, hang on, I want to actually pay that high interest because that high interest rate is being applied on a large loan, meaning you not only is it a high interest rate, but it's also being applied on a larger amount. So you have to determine, the only difference is you don't tend to see progress as quickly with your debt avalanche method because it takes a while to clear that large loan. So if you want the mathematically correct one, it's the debt avalanche. If you want something that is more for quick wins and motivation, then you look at the debt snowball. Now, with the debt snowball, yes, you could potentially pay a little bit more interest, but what you find normally is generally with your smaller debt, the interest is usually fairly high. So which one is best for you? If you feel you need encouragement, you want to see that progress, I've paid off one debt, I've paid off the second debt, then the debt snowball method will work for you. And in all honesty, I find it probably works for 70 to 80% of people, because most people aren't really numbers driven. They're more saying, okay, I've accomplished one thing, I've accomplished another thing, right? But for those that say, hang on, I'm disciplined, I'm driven by numbers, I can stick to a system, then the debt avalanche method will save you in the long term. So I'm just doing a time check here. It looks like I'm still good. Of course, you can do a hybrid approach where you can tackle one small debt first and then switch to the avalanche method. Now, something that we often see, and I'm sure many of us have gotten the SMSs, which is something called debt consolidation, or as I like to call it, debt consolidation. Sorry, I'm just adjusting something on my screen here. Okay, sorry, I just add a. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so debt consolidation. Now, I'm sure you've all seen the SMSs, consolidate your loans here, 300,000 waiting to be approved or already approved, etc. And it's quite tempting, right? Especially when you have multiple debts and you're kind of juggling payments. Now, what exactly is debt consolidation? Well, it's often marketed or sold as a way to simplify your finances, meaning you combine multiple debts, be it credit cards, be it loans, be it store accounts, into a single payment with one lender. So yes, it sounds convenient, but there's some T's and C's that we need to be aware of. How does it work? You take out one loan or line of credit, something like a revolving credit plan to pay off existing debts. So that's the important part. This loan is specifically being taken out to pay off existing debts. Then you get to focus on one monthly payment. And if it's done correctly, it should be with a lower interest rate. Now, common tools is obviously personal loans, balance transfer, credit cards, where credit card companies say, hang on, bring over your balance, we will charge you less interest. And in another way that can often make sense is with a home equity loan. Why? Because often when you do have a home equity loan, meaning that you have capacity in your property to borrow more against your property, you often get to do it at a much lower rate than you would with a credit card or a personal loan. And the idea behind it is that it streamlines your repayment and may reduce interest costs. However, one very important factor is when looking at a debt consolidation loan, it should only be considered if you actually are going to save money. So this is what I call the debt consolidation con, right? If you look at here, your current debt, you are paying 10,000 a month and maybe it's feeling a bit tight. But if you look at your debt makeup, you have a credit card of 60,000 Rand with 17% interest. You have a personal loan at 80,000 Rand with 22% interest. You have another personal loan at 19% interest of 30,000 and then a store account of 23%, 30,000 and at 23%. So you're paying 10,000 a month. The total debt is 200,000 and you may be feeling the squeeze. However, if you do continue with the 10,000 rand payment, your debt will actually be paid off in just over 2 years, which means yes, you pay interest on here, but 50,000 interest over that time frame. Now somebody comes and says along, but hang on, Anwar, or whatever your name is, why are you paying 10,000 Rand? It feels so tight. You should actually consolidate your loan and you can pay much less. You can pay 6,230 Rand. And you think that sounds like an awfully great deal because now you're paying, what, 3,800 less. You are saving money. And that is a natural human thing to do because you're not looking at the actual total cost. You are just looking at the monthly so-called saving in cash flow. But what does that debt consolidation con really cost you? Well, firstly, more often than not, remember when I spoke about that maximum lending rate, 28%, often debt consolidation loans, because you are taking out a loan to pay for other loans, will often charge a maximum of 28%. Why? Why would someone take out a consolidation loan to pay off other loans? They are really feeling financial pressure. What does it represent to the bank? Higher risk. Therefore, they charge 28%, the most they can charge. Remember also, it's not what we call secure debt. They can't claim anything from you if you don't pay it, right? So they also make it more expensive, 28%. What it means is, yes, you're paying less per month, 6,200 versus 10,000, but how do they make that payment less? By stretching out the term. And if you look at in this case where they stretched out to 60 months, you ended up paying interest of 173,000 Rand, as opposed to had you left it as is at 50,000 Rand. That is what 3 times, almost 3.5 times more interest. Yet you are thinking that you are saving 3,800 a month. So that is what I call the debt consolidation con. Now, are there times that you can consider debt consolidation? Yes, certainly there are, right? Firstly, when you do have high interest rate debt, such as credit cards, etc., 25+%, and you have a credit score that qualifies for better rates, you can then consolidate into that. What's very important, or if you need structure to avoid missed payments, meaning you have so many payments that you cannot keep track of it anymore, that you need some kind of structure to not miss payments. However, avoid debt consolidation if you cannot get a lower rate than the current debts, or if you cannot afford the new monthly payment, and very importantly, you haven't fixed the spending habits that cause the debt in the first place. In the previous example, what often happens is the person that says, oh, I'm now saving 3,800 Rand, but I'm paying less, they often go spend that money on something else, right? Instead of actually saving that money. So yes, it's not just about saving on cash flow, it's also saving on total interest, but also fixing those spending habits that cause the debt. Now, and very important, remember, debt consolidation is a tool. which in its appropriate manner can be used, but is not a fix. You have to pay it with budgeting and discipline. Now, the question is, Anwar, so what if I'm that 10,000 and is a bit of a pressure? You know what? It would have been nice if I could look at paying 6,000 Rand, but I understand also that paying more interest is not going to work. Is there some other way of bringing debt relief, in other words, to the monthly amount that I'm paying? And the answer is yes, right? So what exactly is debt counseling? I know it's something that you've maybe seen on Facebook, you maybe seen on TikTok, and I feel there's not a lot of actual reliable information on debt counseling and how it actually works. Also, you see many times it's call centers, and a lot of times association with call centers, but if you understand proper debt counseling, will understand that that's not actually the best medium in which to assist clients. Now, what exactly is debt counseling? Well, essentially, it's a lifeline for overwhelmed borrowers. Very importantly, it is a regulated process via our National Credit Act, whereby a certified professional helps you manage unaffordable debt. With that certified professional, a debt counselor, such as someone like myself that is registered with the NCR or the National Credit Regulator, the purpose thereof is to avoid bankruptcy or insolvency. Also, to restructure your payments to fit your budget. What it also does is legally protect you from creditors, for example, from repossessions, from judgments, etc. Now, who are the key players, like I mentioned earlier, is the debt counselor, someone like myself. Then you also have the creditors, who are your banks and your lenders, the people from whom you've now borrowed the money. And lastly, it's the National Credit Regulator, or the NCR. Now, why should one consider debt counseling? Well, firstly, it does give you legal protection, meaning creditors can't harass you or repossess your assets. Secondly, it combines all your payments into a single affordable payment, meaning a consolidated monthly repayment plan. Now, very importantly, this is not the same thing like a consolidation loan. A consolidation loan is taking all your debt, combining all those balances into one balance and paying off one loan. This consolidation is simply a single payment, but this single payment is still distributed to your various loan accounts. Of course, one of the big advantages with debt counseling is that you are also able to reduce the interest rate by negotiating lower rates on existing debt. And what's very important, excuse me. Sorry, Sam is just taking the food out to me. Sorry. I apologize for that. And then I'm sorry about that. Okay. Um, Very importantly, financial education. What I find often is that many times when people end up in debt, there was often no budgeting, there was very poor money management skills. So what's important is you can't just reduce your monthly payment, you actually need to learn how to budget properly and manage your money better. Who is it for? Well, individuals or families with multiple debts, such as personal loans, credit cards, vehicle finance, home loans, or store accounts, or and especially those struggling to meet monthly payments. So what does the process look like? So firstly, when you apply, you have to submit your financial details to a registered debt counselor. From there, we then do an assessment. We review your income, your expenses, and your debts. And the idea is there to say, what is your income? How much can you actually afford to pay towards your debts? So, for example, let's just say your income is 30,000 Rand and your expenses are 20,000 Rand. And let's say your debts are 15,000 Rand. So if you look at your expenses, 20,000, look at your debts, 15,000, that is 35,000 Rand. But your income is 30,000. That means you are 5,000 Rand short. In that instance, we can then say, hang on, you're 15,000 in debt. Let's see if we can get away with paying 10,000 Rand. We then propose that reduced payment to your creditors, and that then goes as a single amount that gets distributed to your creditors. So you go from paying 15,000 Rand to various creditors to paying 10,000 Rand. One amount gets deducted and distributed to your creditors. What's very important, you also get legal protection from harassment. So if you're getting phone calls, if you're getting letters, etc., or if they are threatening repossession of your vehicle or your house, it is a way then to protect it. And that gets enforced via something called a court order. Once you've actually paid off your debt, and typically how long does it take? Well, for unsecured debt, usually as up to 5 years, but it can be paid off sooner. But the idea is to pay off your unsecured debt within 5 years, right? And then from there, once you paid off your debt, you then get your clearance certificate. Okay. Now, this is a real world before and after comparison table of actual clients that we have. If we look at client A, this client had a credit card, personal loan, and store account. A total debt of 570,000. The total monthly payment before was 32,000 Rand. In this instance, the payment got reduced to 10,000 Rand a month. So that was a reduction in the monthly payment, but what's it, 22,000 Rand. What's also important is not only was the payment reduced, but the actual interest was reduced from an average of 16 to 29% to below 1%. So in this instance, not only are you saving on your monthly payment, but you're also paying significantly less interest. If we look at client B, same scenario, also credit card, personal loan, store account, total debt of 408,000 for totally monthly payment that reduced from 19,000 Rand to 9,000 Rand. Once again, if you look at the average interest rate, before it was 21 to 28%, in this instance, it dropped down to just over 0%. So once again, not just a saving not just a saving in monthly repayment, but a significant saving in the interest rate. Very different to your debt consolidation loan. Now, if we look at client C, where there's now a bit of home loan and vehicles in, here's a significantly higher amount. In this instance, was paying before 36,000, almost 37,000 Rand, reduced to 26,000. In this case, the interest was 12 to 29%. So on those vehicles and on those homes, it was more 12%. And then we got it reduced to 2.2% on the unsecured debt and 9% on the secured home loan and vehicles. So what we can see is if you are feeling a bit pressured, debt counseling can work in that not only does it reduce your monthly repayment, but it also reduces your interest rates, which means that you're actually saving money, unlike with your debt consolidation loan. So what are a few debt counseling myths? Well, number
check
one.
the chat first before moving on, because there's some questions.
Oh, it's some questions. Okay. So let me just check the questions quickly. Thank you. Okay, so can a person voluntarily opt for debt counseling, and what are criteria to be eligible for debt counseling? So firstly, if you are earning money and you got loans and you feel, oh, I just want to save some money, and you can comfortably afford to pay for it, then unfortunately you don't qualify, because it is meant to bring relief to someone who is struggling with the payments. Now, what does struggling with the payments mean? It means, are you feeling the pressure? It can either mean that for every 100 Rand that comes in, basically 100 Rand is going out, and one sort of mishap can put you in debt, right? It can also mean that you are already starting to miss payments. If you're already starting to miss payments, then you should already seriously be considering debt counseling. But even if you're starting to feel the pressure, if you are feeling to, hey, I'm starting to take from my credit card to pay that loan, or I'm not able to get savings because my loan repayments, then you can opt for debt counseling. How do you know if you're eligible is to actually do a consultation and assessment with a debt counselor like myself. We will look at your budget, we'll look at your loan repayments, and then we'll determine if you're eligible or not, right? So the best way to do it is to actually just do an assessment with a debt counselor like myself or Kendra as well, and then we can determine if you are in fact eligible, right? But if you can comfortably afford your loans and you feel like you just want to save your money, then unfortunately you cannot. So let's just say you earn a good salary, you earn 100,000 a month, your loan repayments is 30,000 a month, but you got more than enough money left at the end of the month. No, you cannot save on that. You have to pay your full amount, because if everyone had to go on debt counseling, the system would break as well. Okay, to qualify, then there's another question. To qualify for such a low interest rate, must you go under debt counseling, or can one not negotiate with the bank directly? So you can negotiate better rates with the bank, but typically not as low as 0%, right? You may, for example, if you're paying 12% on a loan, you might be able to bring it down to 10%. Or if you're paying 20% on a loan, you might be able to bring it down to 15% if it's unsecured. But those low interest rates is typically when someone is properly over indebted, and then they must go by the debt counseling process in order to qualify for those particular low rates. But you can actually negotiate with the bank directly. Typically, if you don't have multiple debts, but it won't be of the magnitude that you can do through the debt counseling process. Okay, then does debt counseling affect your credit score, right? So the answer is yes, but you have to understand how it works in the short term and in the long term. So first, let's look at two scenarios. If you have a good credit score and you apply for debt counseling, then your credit score will initially take a knock. Why? You had a good credit score that gave the impression that you were able to make your payments. But I've come across many people that are over indebted that have fantastic credit scores. In fact, it's the very good credit score that made them over indebted, because they could qualify for a lot bigger loan amounts and much easier credit. So often I find people with good credit scores, but because they had access to large amounts of borrowing and easy borrowing, the credit score was good. When somebody like that applies for debt counseling, then the credit score takes a knock, because it's, hang on, we thought this person was doing okay, they're not actually doing okay, then we'll take the initial knock. However, as you continue paying off your debt and you make your regular payments and your balances reduce, your credit score gets rehabilitated again. So by the time that you come off debt counseling, meaning you've paid off all those debt, your credit score has been built up and will reflect actually as being quite favorable. So I've seen many people qualify for vehicles, home loans within 3 months of coming off debt counseling. Now, if you had a poor credit score, basically the credit score stay there for a bit where it is, and then eventually start improving over time as you make regular payments. So very importantly, as long as you continue to make your regular payments, your credit score will actually improve while in debt counseling. Now I know some people, and you can see on this say, but hang on, when I do go under debt counseling, I cannot borrow money. Well, it's only while you're under the process. And the reason why is you cannot be in a debt payoff mode and be expected to create new debt. It is kind of somebody's going to rehab, but you're still giving him or her the drugs, right? So the important thing is, remember we spoke about good debt. So yes, we can still use good debt. So yes, maybe you still want to buy property in the future. Maybe you still want to invest in education or in a business, etc. So you want to have access to that good debt. The idea is when you are over sort of paying off debt, you don't want to create new debt then, but once you've paid it off, now you're again credit worthy, and now you can raise credit and hopefully for good debt again. So I hope that answers your question with regards to credit score. It's a pleasure, Tamar. Okay. So myth number one, it ruins your credit score. Like I think I just explained it quite clearly now. Myth number two, you will lose all your assets. That's actually not true. Debt counseling actually does the exact opposite, where it actually protects your essential assets, your vehicles, your home, and it restores stability. So even if you are behind on payments, even if you were in arrears with your vehicle, if you're in arrears with your home loan, as long as you haven't received legal judgments, you can still apply for debt review. Now, myth number three also, oh, it's only for irresponsible people. Well, the thing is, life happens, right? And when life happens, debt often comes along. And asking for help is actually a responsible step. It's not saying that you've done something stupid or you were irresponsible. Life just happens. You have to borrow money to sort it out, and sometimes you find, or you maybe got retrenched at work, or a spouse lost a job, or you went through a divorce. It happens, right? And often, like I said, these events lead to debt, and a lot of times it cannot be managed. So asking for help is actually a responsible step. Doesn't mean you are irresponsible. Another myth is expensive, is going to cost you money. The reality is that the fees are capped by law and is in fact included in your monthly repayment. So that monthly repayment I showed previously, the lower monthly repayment actually includes the fee that is payable to the debt counselor, right? Then the other thing is the myth is I'll deal with a call center. Now, while it is true that 70% of debt counseling businesses, I will call them, are call centers, and we all know how lovely it is to do with call centers. With us, you're actually directly supported by a dedicated registered debt counselor and a financial coach. Why a financial coach? Because it's not just about reducing your payments, it's also about improving your financial habits and budgeting habits. Now, when should one seek debt counseling? Well, here's some obvious, well, I would say here's some warning signs. Number one, if you're living on overdraft or credit before payday, meaning before payday, you're in the minus. If you have a debit order being or bouncing or being reversed, you are borrowing for family or you're going onto loan apps just to survive the month. If you are skipping essentials such as food, transport, school costs to pay debt, also, if you are handed over to debt collectors or you're listed in as in arrears on your credit report, so if you pull up your credit report, it will say in arrears. That is a good sign to seek help. Getting constant calls, SMSs, or WhatsApp from collectors, they are not the most fun of people, and very blunt and very rude. And I tend to treat them the same way they treat my clients. And of course, if there's no emergency savings or any room for unexpected experiences, and simply feeling stuck with no clear way out, even if you have a budget. So, how does one go about managing your debt smartly? Well, ask yourself before borrowing, will this debt either increase my net worth, meaning is it good debt? Am I going to, create wealth by borrowing this money, or solve an emergency? Because sometimes it can be a medical emergency, and no matter what the cost, you just need the money to solve it. Yes, in that instance, it may be the only way, it may be a life-saving emergency. Secondly, always ask yourself, can I afford repayments if life circumstances change? What if interest rates go up? Can I still afford to pay it? What if I get a reduction in my salary? Can I still afford to pay it? What if my spouse loses my job, or if I get divorced and I only have one income? Can I still afford to pay it? Right? Now, if you do have debt, what's also important is then to prioritize repayment, and where possible, focus on your high interest rate debt, bad debt specifically first, using your avalanche method. Yes, if you do need a bit of motivation, start with a smaller debt with the snowball method. But if you want to save in the long term, high interest, bad debt first, right? Also, if you can, look if you can refinance high rate loans to lower rates if possible. Maybe you're paying 25% on your credit card, you can maybe bring it down to 17%. It's still a saving. Then another something someone always asks me, Anwar, should I put all my extra money towards my debt repayments? Well, what I normally say is actually to divide 70% to debt repayments. This is now your extra money, and 30% towards savings. Why? It's also about creating habits. You don't want to be in a situation where yes, you're paying off your debt, but now something goes wrong and you go back to that same debt. So by putting a 30% to savings, when you do end up needing money, you actually want to go to your savings and create the habit that you go to your savings for emergency as opposed to going back to your debt. And like I said before, not all debt is evil. Use it as a tool where necessary, but not as a crutch. So very importantly, in order to avoid debt traps, right? You do not want to take on new debt to pay old debt, the so-called take from Peter to pay for Paul. Something else you also don't want to do is ignoring your statements. You know when you don't want to look at it and see how much that bill is every month, then you know something needs to be done. Not having a budget or a spending plan, meaning you don't know where your money is going, often leads to debt traps because what happens is when you don't have a budget spending plan, your shortfalls is covered by debt, is covered by loans, is covered by your credit card, and not having an emergency fund. Remember last week we spoke about the emergency fund? That is there when something goes wrong. If you don't have emergency fund, what do we often do? We end up going to something like a credit card or a personal loan, and that in turn, if it happens too often, leads to a debt trap, right? So we want to avoid these. So what we're gonna do now is I'm just gonna post our I just wanna so we're gonna give you homework, right? And then we can do a short Q&A if we still want to do is what we're gonna do is I'm gonna post the debt planner in the chat. And what it does is you're gonna list all your outstanding debt. The name of the creditors, what type of loan, your minimum repayment, your interest rate, your outstanding balance. Then you're going to make a plan to make additional payments to your debts using either the snowball avalanche method. And if you are struggling, explore debt relief methods such as, or options, I shall say, such as debt counseling if you feel that you maybe need a bit of relief, right? So the one thing I need